He would walk through the door, drop his bags, Daddy's home, take his phone, Friday night, Shabbat Shalom.
He would walk to the door, drop his bags, Daddy's home, take his phone, Friday night, Shabbat Shalom, 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 Shalom. He would walk through the door, drop his bags, Daddy's home, take his phone, Friday night, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. He would walk through the door, drop his bags, Daddy's home, take his phone, Friday night, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Yeah.
Yo, 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 my name is Erica Kirk. I might make you go berserk. I might be a fraud. I might work for Mossad. Well, I am back, and it is great to be here with you on another week of Wake Up Call. So there's this whole Erica Kirk, Candace Owens debacle that's happening. And I haven't even gone deep down it, but I've seen enough. And I personally believe that little rap weird thing that Erica Kirk did was an MK Ultra glitch, basically. I've talked about it before on previous episodes. I'm not sure if I've been through MK Ultra, but I think that I may have been through a form of it. On like the later end, basically, and through being on reality TV and stuff in 2010 on Big Brother. And when I see her glitching like that, I think that she's being told these things, but then she delivers it in a really weird way, and that's what's happening. Now, Candace Owens, on the other hand, and again, I could be off with this, but this is just from what I know. Candace Owens is very tactful in her delivery. She has forethought. She seems very clear, but her body language has changed dramatically over the past few years. She does this weird thing that when she's trying to tell you the truth, she starts swaying her head like this, like, oh, where did that come from? Are you doing that because you're trying to be like the Cheshire Cat with your swirly eyes? Like, what are you doing there? It's bizarre to me. So even though Candace is the better actress of the two, I feel like she's almost trying to like sway you into what she's saying. It's just, they both have indications of MK Ultra is what I'm saying. And whether this argument is legit or not, I think that it's completely orchestrated. They are being told things that probably don't exist and they believe them. That's what I can see from it. So that's that. What are we going to be talking about this episode? We've been on the topic of Mormons and LDS and all this stuff, which I have to say, Candace has made those connections, but she hasn't taken it a step further to say, hey, you know what? These people might not only be involved in the Charlie Kirk shooting, but they might be involved in the whole technocracy in the United States. So again, a clear indication to me that she is controlling the narrative. She is meant to tell the truth, but only to a certain extent. So, after I posted last episode a clip on X, a lot of people who are very in the know about what's happening in Racine were talking about, you know, you're talking about this realism cult and the blending of Mormonism with Zoroastrianism. That's basically theosophy. And there are definitely links to theosophy, but I kind of, out of nowhere, I don't know, I was doing research on theosophy. I thought I was going to make this episode about that, but then I got into the work of Rudolf Steiner, and I've been saying for so long that Satan and Lucifer are not the same. And so when people say, oh, it's Luciferian, but then they also cross it with Satanism and think that it's the same thing, I've been saying that it's not. And then I got into theosophy and some of Rudolf Steiner's work, and he is probably one of the, occultists, esotericists from the late 1800s, early 1900s that I resonate most with. I'm not saying that I believe everything that he's saying was right, but he was very accurate, in my opinion, on these two opposing evil forces and how they control the human mind, and that is Ahriman versus Lucifer. So Ahriman is the Zoroastrian negative entity who I've talked about, and then Lucifer is another negative entity, but they're actually opposing forces on each side of the human psyche. And I think it's extremely important for people to know the difference, because we are coming up against so much. And even when we think that we know not all there is to know, but we think that we know more than most people, I think if we dive into this work of Rudolf Steiner, it puts everything into proper perspective and keeps us in this place of I don't want to say Christ consciousness, but it kind of is, and a place of humility too. But he was extremely accurate, in my opinion, when it comes to the two different forms of evil, and Lucifer and this Ahriman figure, who most would now consider Satan, being actually opposing forces within evil. And I kind of wanted to touch on this because I think that we can learn a lot about what the dark occultists believe through this, as well as reflect on ourselves when we start to get swayed one way or the other. So, you think about the angel and the devil on your shoulder, right? Well, in Steiner's work, it's almost like the angel is Lucifer and the devil is Ahriman from Zoroastrianism, but he uses the Lucifer figure sort of in a Gnostic way. And that too much light and too much knowledge too fast can be a negative thing. So when we talk about why can't people wake up? Why can't they wake up and be on our level, basically? What we're doing is Luciferian, actually. We need to take a step back and know that every single person wakes up in their own time. Everything is happening exactly the way that it's supposed to, because when Lucifer came onto this planet, in what is thought to be around 3000 BC from the work of Steiner in Asia, actually, and what created ancient Hindu culture, which we'll get into a little bit, but he came into physical, he fell, and he was trying to wake humanity up too fast. So I actually think that there's truth to that. I think that whether we mean to or not, that we can all be a little bit Luciferian sometimes when you want people to catch up to be on the level that you're at. That can actually cause trauma and problems. Whereas with this Ahrimanic energy, this dark force in Zoroastrianism, it's all about materialism. It's all about the 3D. It's all about that there's nothing beyond here. So Luciferianism is too much spirituality, and the Ahriman figure is too much 3D earthbound matters and no spirituality. So he talks about these two opposing forces and evil. Now, how many people have these conversations? It's just, oh, it's Luciferian, it's satanic, it's evil, and it's just all pinned as one thing when it's not. So let's get into it a little bit further. So Steiner believed that in between the Ahrimanic force and the Luciferian force was the Christ consciousness, right? And that all humans, if they could balance the two sides of this darker force or evil force, or, you know, even though, or false light force, that we could come into Christ consciousness. And I think that there's a lot of truth to this. But he said that Christ came into a body and that Lucifer came into a body, but Satan or Ahriman or the Satanic type figure had not come into physical yet, but during the time of the Antichrist, that this form would take into physical. So Steiner said that there would be a time where Ahriman, or this more satanic type figure, would return in the West, specifically into this Antichrist figure, and would incarnate and want to become immortal through technology. So during COVID, there was a quote of Steiner's that was going around, and I remember saving it, and it popped up again. And I was like, you know, this guy, for as much as he might be labeled a new age guru, whatever, I think that like he really saw the future properly in a lot of ways. And he said they'll eliminate the soul with medicine. In the future, we will eliminate the soul with medicine under the pretext of a healthy point of view. There will be a vaccine by which the human body will be treated as soon as possible directly at birth, so that the human being cannot develop the thought of existence of soul and spirit. To materialistic doctors, they'll be entrusted the task of removing the soul of humanity, as today people are vaccinated against this disease or that disease. So in the future, children will be vaccinated with a substance that can be produced precisely in such a way that people, thanks to this vaccination, will be immune to being subjected to the madness of spiritual life. He would be extremely smart, but he would not develop a conscience, and that is the true goal of some materialistic circles. With such a vaccine, you can easily make the etheric body lose in the physical body. Once the etheric body is detached, the relationship between the universe and the etheric body would become extremely unstable, and man would become an automaton. For the physical body of man would be most polished on this earth by spiritual will. So the vaccine becomes a kind of Ahrimanic force. Ahriman again. Man can no longer get rid of a given materialistic feeling. He becomes materialistic of constitution and can no longer rise to the spiritual. So, again, let's dive back into some of these Ahrimanic versus Luciferian ideas from Steiner. He believed that Lucifer incarnated around 3000 BC, and that was the fall. And it was Lucifer who wanted to give humanity too much intelligence too quickly to destroy the ability to evolve at the proper rate. And this happened in the city of Manu. Now, Manu is a Central Asian mystery center, and it's tied to Noah. So even though I talk about Zoroastrianism being like the most ancient form of religion and spirituality that we know today, and pre-Abrahamic beliefs, technically there are ancient Hindu beliefs that are much older, and they're sort of connected to this Atlantean story that date back to about 10,500 BC and the temples of Atlantis. So it's actually thought that Lucifer came through into Asia. Lucifer, too much light, too much spirit. Have you ever met somebody that you're like, they're just too nice and like too woo-woo a little bit? You kind of just want them to be, come back down to earth. Hello, space cadet. Well, that's Luciferian energy, even if they mean well. I've noticed in life, like I would consider myself, for as much as I have like a badass side, I also have an innocent side. And when I meet somebody who's too much of either, it annoys me. This all has to do with that. Like if I meet somebody that's like too goody two shoe, I'm like, hello, like where's the reality? So that's more of the satanic energy coming in, saying like, hey, get back down to earth. Then if you meet somebody who's so like attached to earthly desires, attached to making money, and attached to material things, they actually can use more of the Luciferian energy of like getting connected to spirit, getting connected to beauty and creativity and all this stuff. This is why the powers that be worship these figures. I'm not telling you to go worship them. I'm not telling you that they're anything great, because they're not. But it's these two opposing negative forces that when you find the balance within, you become the Christed figure. And I really do think that there's a lot of truth to that. So Lucifer, too much spirit, inflation of consciousness. I think that in our circle, our community, we all have to be aware of this, okay? Because it's easy to think that, not that you have it all figured out, but it's easy to think like, I'm ahead of the game. I'm leading others and whatever. Something's always going to knock you off your horse if you think that. So in inflation of consciousness, don't do that. That's Luciferian. Okay? We all have to be reminded of that. Intense but ungrounded spirituality. When I talk about these things, I try to talk about them as like, I'm your friend. I'm really just trying to convey this information in a very practical way. Luckily, I am a Capricorn. I do have a grounded energy about me. I am ruled by Saturn, so I'm always going to pull these aspects of like my woo-woo down to earth. This all has to do with these opposing forces. Lucifer wants humanity to forget the value of incarnation and moral struggle in the physical world. So even last episode when I'm talking about, oh God, like we just need to get out of this place. We'll do the best we can and then just get out. Yeah, there's truth to that. But if you're constantly thinking about getting out and not about doing while you're here, that's also Luciferian. How many people actually really talk about this and lay it out like this, like really simply? Not many. Okay. So Lucifer's gifts: artistic inspiration, imagination, creative thinking, the ability to envision spiritual worlds. And Ahriman, the more satanic, and before I go further, as many of you know, Lucifer is connected to Venus, the morning star, and Satan, or Ahriman, is connected to Saturn. So these are also two planetary energies that are completely opposite from one another. That how many people, they just say, they take the biblical text of this negative force and they just make it all one. No, it's not. So Ahriman, the force of too much matter. It's too much groundedness. It's hardening. It's materialism. It's technological domination. It's mechanistic thinking, loss of spirituality, cold calculation, literalism, fear-driven control. Steiner links Ahriman to modern scientific materialism, bureaucratic systems, economic reduction of humans to resources, and an over-reliance on technology. For Steiner, Ahriman's goal is to convince humanity that only the material world is real. And that's what they're going to do through this. Oh, you'll be able to live through forever through AI, or transferring your consciousness into another vessel. Like, that's what it's all about. They want you to think that there's nothing else. At the same time, what is Luciferian? It's to talk about leaving this place too quick and too fast without doing your mission here. So for us, especially here, we have to remember that, or else we're going to be into this Luciferian thought. And I have to remind myself of that too. So human evolution, it's about balancing both. Lucifer pulls up through to the astral and to higher realms, whereas Ahriman pulls down into this rigid material world, imprisoning consciousness. Christ, in Steiner's esoteric Christianity, acts as the equilibrium, somewhere in the middle, right? So Steiner believed that we had already gone through the Luciferian phase, we had already gone through the Christ phase, and now we are stepping into the Ahrimanic phase. And he believed that Satan, the Satan type Ahrimanic figure, actually Satan, we'll get into it a little bit later, but he believed sort of that Satan was a blend of Ahriman and Lucifer. But Ahriman had never incarnated. I don't know, I don't know who has been here and who hasn't, but this Ahrimanic incarnation is a metaphor for the Antichrist, basically, and the embodiment of the Ahriman in cultural psyche. So I think that can be debated a little bit, because obviously we see a lot of this stuff going on with the New Age movement. A lot of people are becoming aware of their spirituality and coming online with certain things. But at the same time, there's also this scientific need for us to be here forever, which is ridiculous. So he believed Lucifer acts on the astral body through feelings and fantasies, enthusiasm, pride, visionary states, escapism, and spiritual one-sidedness. We all have to watch this. I mean, every day, sometimes I feel like I have a vision just coming out of my third eye, right? And I tell myself, hey, sweetie, you got to bring that back down to earth. How are you going to make this like grounded into reality? Like, you're not a god. Get off your high horse. How are you going to make a living doing this stuff? How are you going to make this grounded into reality? And that's where Ahriman comes in, the more grounded side of things. How does the Ahrimanic force and the Luciferian force affect the individual soul? Lucifer acts on the astral body, so like anything that deals with feelings, fantasies, enthusiasm, pride, visionary states. I mean, think about all of the religious figures in the past couple hundred years, how they sound like egomaniacs and like having these visions, which may have happened, but they do sound like complete sociopath nut jobs. Yeah, it's because they were probably too much in their Luciferian energy. And then Ahriman acts on habits, patterns, actual life force energy. It's an intellectual energy, it's logic, it's machine-like thinking, it's cynicism, and spiritual blindness. It all has to do with being in the physical. So Steiner believed that through human evolution, transforming the Luciferic astral body, you do it through art, morality, and love, which is Venus, right? And transforming the Ahrimanic etheric body through conscious thinking and spiritual science. So I know that I've become extremely, extremely intuitive over the past few years, but sometimes I need other people around me to just be the source of logic to bring me down into like into reality, basically, if that makes sense. So I think it was, I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 episodes ago, at the end of the show, I shared a story of Mary Magdalene and the dragon and how we're basically going to fight these forces of evil. And I think Steiner was onto something, because he said the goal of human evolution is not to eliminate Lucifer or Ahriman, but to integrate their gifts while resisting their extremes and to maintain equilibrium through a consciously cultivated inner life. Like, you're not going to slay the dragon, for as much as that's your first gut reaction to evil, is like, I'm going to take this down. That's not how it's going to happen. It's going to happen by enough of us awakening, so that force that has this duality within it also awakens and becomes like us. Actually, we are the ones with the power. So when we talk about this satanic force or this Luciferian force, it's going to mimic what we do through Steiner's work. And this really resonates with me a lot. So Steiner did take the name Ahriman directly from Zoroastrianism, which I've been talking about, but he reinterpreted it in a way that differs from the Persian religion, in that the Persian religion believed that Ahriman was just dark and evil, and he believed more that it sort of served a purpose. In Persian religion, Ahriman is also known as Angermanyu, who I've talked about, or Ahriman. And Ahura Mazda is the benevolent creative deity. Now, I've had questions on whether Ahura Mazda is the real God, or is Ahura Mazda Lucifer. From my studies, Ahura Mazda is the real God, but he's the creator of the universe. So who's the creator of the multiverse? So this is where I'm completely confused, because Ahura Mazda is thought to be completely separate from Lucifer, because Ahura Mazda is the real source of light, whereas Lucifer is the false source of light. And this is where it gets really, really confusing, and this is where I'm still trying to figure things out. Now, Steiner did believe that Christ actually incarnated and was physical on earth along with Lucifer. Personally, I don't know if they did, but I'm not closed off to it. And it's entirely possible that this Christ story that we hear over and over and over again through different figures throughout thousands of years, maybe that soul did reincarnate into another form. I'm not opposed to it. I'm not completely closed off to that idea. It's just like, why would they repeat the same story over and over again? And if the soul evolved and did what it was supposed to do on earth, why did it come back to do the same thing over again? I don't know. That's the part that doesn't really make any sense to me. So another thing that I think is important for us to remember here with the topics that we talk about is Steiner said repeatedly, the Persians, or Zoroastrians, understood the spiritual importance of transforming the earth and not escaping it. And while I do think that it is important to escape it and know the game, we also have to be grounded and know our role here too. It's a balance, and I can see how I can go out of balance both ways sometimes, and I think that we all just need to take a good look at ourselves sometimes. So one of the most interesting aspects to all of this is the final integration, as Steiner referred to it, and it's that we're not trying to fight Lucifer. We're not trying to fight Ahriman. We're trying to transform ourselves so they also are transformed into better beings for us. They're not destroyed, they're not banished, but they're also redeemed through us, through human freedom, through balance. This is such a powerful message, because everything that we talk about kind of makes us feel like we are, in the fishbowl, in this prison system, which might be true to a certain extent. But if we awaken ourselves and awaken as a group, then these destructive forces will also change. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because in Christianity and in Abrahamic religions, we think of Lucifer and Satan as the darkest forces. Are they? Well, Steiner says no, that they are sort of the two opposing forces on our shoulders, but there are two darker forces than them, and that's where things are going if we don't stop it, basically through our own awakening. So now you're familiar with the differences between this Ahrimanic force and this Luciferian force, which I think that the controllers that be worship both, because they think, oh, well, if you do fall in the center, then you can awaken, and that's why they're both necessary, which is true, but they tend to kind of end up falling one way or the other by default, right? So Steiner also said that there were the asuras, and this had to do with the I and the ego. So Lucifer had to do with the astral body, Ahriman had to do with the etheric body, but the asuras had to do with the ego. And this has to do with moral destruction and loss of self. So this is where the whole AI agenda comes in, because Lucifer might want you to be too airy-fairy, whereas Ahriman might want you to be too caught to earthly matters. The asuras was another negative, or is another negative energy that says we want you to lose yourself, basically, your whole identity, your whole I, that positive aspect of the ego. We want you to lose that. This is where we start to get into the AI agenda, right? So Lucifer corrupts feelings, Ahriman corrupts thinking, the asuras corrupt the will and the very core of the identity. So when David talks about the true I and stuff, this is what the asuras really want to take away. And this is the third hierarchy of the adversarial beings. And you would say, okay, well, if Ahriman is attached to Saturn and Lucifer is attached to Venus, then who are the asuras attached to? And it's thought that they're attached to the old sun or the old moon, and their fall was so profound that they opposed the human ego at the deepest level. So this is the splitting of the human soul from the body, right? So the whole idea of a soulless existence or falling backwards in evolution, this is more of an asura type energy. And it's the connection to sub-nature, basically. Like, we're already living in a fake reality. Well, that's where the fake on fake reality comes through, is the asuras. And Steiner believed that the Luciferian energy and that the Ahrimanic energy could become integrated and become a good force. He didn't really think so about the asuras. It's sort of debatable. They're very much more difficult to redeem, and they may remain completely outside of human evolution. So where are they located? They are basically thought to be beneath Saturn. So when this is complicated, but from what I know, this lines up with Steiner's work. When we come into this realm, we have to pass through the other planets energetically, and there are 7 spheres, right? Like one on top of one another, and and the asuras are connected to something beneath Saturn. Saturn's the one that gives us the body. So it's like we're in matter, but it's like dense, even denser than the matter that we know. So if we could think of a hell, like we're already kind of living through hell, but like an an even deeper layer of hell. And I saw that Rich did an episode on the eighth sphere, which I haven't watched, but I think that all has to do with what I'm talking about. And sometimes I purposely don't watch things because I don't want to cross over into my research when I'm doing something separate, but I did see that he did that, so I'm sure that it ties into some of the things that I'm talking about here. Now, so we've talked about the two main forms of evil that aren't necessarily purely evil. Then we're talking about the asuras that basically want to detach our soul from our body. What is the lowest form of evil in Steiner's work? Well, that's Sorath. And Sorath is the deepest and most fearsome adversarial being in Steiner's cosmology, even below the asuras. If Lucifer is too much spirit, and Ahriman is too much matter, and the asuras are moral disintegration, then Sorath is the principle of pure anti-human, anti-Christ destructiveness. And so when we talk about the Antichrist, I think that we're talking about this type of energy. So obviously the hierarchy of adversaries, it's Lucifer, Ahriman, asuras, and Sorath. And Sorath seeks to invert or destroy the meaning of human evolution itself. So Steiner believed that Lucifer and Ahriman ultimately will be redeemed, but the Asuric influence, questionable. Some of it might be redeemed, some of it might not, whereas the Sorathic principle will not be redeemed because it's the essence of anti-evolution. Now, I kind of touched on this earlier in different ways, but this is the piece that if anybody thinks that Satan and Lucifer are the same being, I want you to tell them this. Okay, Satan in Christianity is actually technically two separate figures. It's Ahriman and Lucifer in one. So this is where it really breaks down clear in his work. Lucifer is the serpent. It's the fallen light bringer, the tempter of Eve, and the angelic being of pride, illusion, and false light. Whereas the second, the Satan, the adversary, the accuser, the figure in Job, the cold legalistic tester, the hardness of the letter of law, is more of this Saturn type Ahrimanic figure. But in Christianity, they are morphed as one when they're really two. Sorath is not Satan. He is the sun demon. He is worse than Satan. If you could even imagine that there's something worse than Satan. So all these Christians who talk about Satan, no, there's something that's actually worse, and it's Sorath. And it's the anti-solar being. It's the demon of 666, the destroyer of the spiritual mission of Earth. And it's a being that's not just opposed to Christ, but the entire purpose of human evolution. And I think that that's where we're basically at. And I would think that Rich's episode on the eighth sphere probably had everything to do with this. But if you think that we're already in a cosmic trap, there are ways that they want to get us trapped even further. And while it's so important that we know that there is a way out and that it's completely capable and we should strive to that, I think it's also important that we stay grounded onto our earthly mission here, because we don't want to become Luciferian either. So I hope that explained the two opposing forces of evil and then the four together. I know it's complicated, but I always try to break it down as simply as possible. Anyway, I will be here next week. I think I'm going to be out the week of Christmas just because I think everybody is at Iconic. So I should be here next week. But yeah, the week after, and I think New Year's week, I'll probably be out too. So I'll see you soon, and thanks for being here.